So welcome to the new members who have joined us today, and I hope it will be a fruitful engagement for all of us.
Thanks, Lindelwa, and good evening, colleagues, researchers, and welcome to today's session. And this is a free session where we engage. We are today going to focus on the research, on the writing of a research proposal for the execution of an academic research project. The approach that we are going to adopt is to use a case study. I have tried to capture the most simplest statements from literature that advise or that propose how we need to write a research proposal. And the approach that we're going to adopt when we use a case study is to look at what literature requires of us. Then we look at the case study. If the researcher who executed a specific project has indeed complied with the requirement from literature, or he went off tangent, then we discuss that. We can make recommendations that because we see this as a gap, we think the researcher should have included this and that and that. And if the researcher was spot on, we also say, yes, the researcher is spot on. Then this depends on how we see and we view the example or the case study. Today's case study is the establishment of catchment management agencies in South Africa, an organizational design perspective. This project was executed focusing on entities under the Department of Water and Sanitation. They are called catchment management agencies. If I may just introduce what we're going to look at today. You see, authors are saying that they see a research proposal as a project planning document. And they say a good research proposal gives the reader a clear and consistent outline of a number of aspects as follows. The very first statement will even become more clearer as we continue with the presentation, because a research proposal is not only meant for academic purposes. A research proposal can be there for an organization that wants to examine or investigate a specific problem so that it can solve it. That is when research is meant to solve an existing problem. We see now here, I think most of us might be familiar with the different stages and the content of a research proposal. And here we are led to believe there should be a topic to be studied, there should be objectives, the research design, the research methodology, timeframes. Yes, including timeframes and resources. But a proposal is seen as a backward and a forward-looking document, in that a research proposal talks of the now. For an example, when it presents a problem, it can present a problem as a present problem. But forward-looking means that there are steps and procedures that must be followed in order to execute a research project. So therefore, in writing a research proposal, one would see the status of what is seen as a challenge and as something that has to be also investigated. In other words, as a forward-looking document. But something that has not been written, and which I didn't read it from any of these authors, is that a research proposal also talks of the past. You see, if you do literature, preliminary literature review, you could see what has been done with respect to the topic or the problem to be investigated. So to me, that is the past. But the now is what we see as a problem. It is stated in a statement of problem, and forward-looking would be seen in terms of the methodology on how the problem will be solved or how the project would be executed in a way of investigation. And I think by saying that, I might have summarized the entire slide here. Someone says the backward and the forward looking is in terms of the past tense. And in this past tense, the author does not refer to what has happened in the past. The author thinks that when you're writing a statement of a problem, you might use past tense, but although you can use present tense, but he says that some people use past tense, so which means that it is talking of something that is not yet to happen, but it talks of something that appears to have happened. But another important aspect, there are three things that are very important in terms of the research proposal. That it is used as a document to communicate. And there in bracket, the reason why I put approval there is that for academic purposes, even for a real problem, a research proposal is an intent. It communicates once what is to be done. So if it is in terms of the academic project, one is communicating to either the supervisor or the institution under which one is enrolled, that I intend to execute a specific project, and these are the steps, and I justify it in this manner, and this is what I think should be the outcomes. So there is an approval which is sought. Therefore, in terms of the organization, for an example, at UNISA, you even have the ethical committee that has to approve that the research indeed would not impact negatively on the respondents. So that is where I wrote approval, and that the supervisor should also give approval that, yes, this is a researchable topic, the proposal is fair enough, we can continue executing it. That is when it is taken by an enrolled student to go and execute. And if you are an employee or you are some service provider appointed by a specific organization, then it means that the organization must also sanction that the proposal is worth pursuing, looking at its cons and pros. And of course, organizations would look at the cost of it and the extent to which they will benefit, as it will assist them in solving existing organizational problems. And it is a plan because it indicates, it should indicate steps that have to be taken. From you've got to indicate how you will execute it. In your design, you need to indicate the methodologies or the steps until the final stage of data analysis and reporting, communicating, and presenting the final research report. But a research proposal is also seen as a contract, particularly if we go to academics. It is a contract between the supervisor and the student that it might also serve as a point of reference when the researcher is executing the project under supervision. And contract in a way that there's an agreement between a student and then the supervisor on how to execute the project. And I just want, this is a repetition, but I just want to indicate what other people see as this, the standard components that must be addressed, that must be there in the research proposal. Start from a working title, background or rationale, preliminary literature study, which others say it is optional, problem statement and or research problem, research design and or approach to the study, and the objectives and the purpose of the study, the hypothesis, which others also say is optional, the research methodology or the methods, timeframes and limitation of the research, outline of the chapters and references. And I think the majority of us are aware of these. But this is just meant to remind us as we enter into the case study and as things that we're going to look at. In other words, what we just saw in the previous slide should serve as the table of contents of the focus of these proceedings. And I go into the case study now. Everything that is going to follow now, that is written in red, is an extract from some of the literature, and it is going to serve as guidelines that we think a researcher has to comply with. And I don't think this is complete or it is cast in stone. I think there should be flexibility in the way that we see it here, because other authors might have written it differently. But for the purpose of today's workshop, let's take this as guidelines that we have to comply with. And after I've presented the red slides, black slides will follow as extracts from one of the research projects. It is a document that has been completed and it has been passed by a specific university. It was for academic purposes. And they are saying background must begin with contextualizing the study, putting the study into context. What are we going to study? The circumstances under which the study is going to be executed. It must relate how a researcher came to decide on the topic and the relevance and the importance of that topic. Further, it must also show the main reasons that led to the researcher deciding on that specific topic. This might be theoretical, empirical, or practical. The background must also state the overall aims and goals of the study as they crystallized during the preliminary reading and thinking about the problem. And I want to emphasize at this stage that we will tend to understand the problem or the research topic after thorough literature research. It is important to read and understand where the status of the topic under investigation, so that one does not research a topic that is not researchable, and that one should not research a topic that has already been researched, because a person can identify a topic and would want to pursue a topic where it is going to make a contribution. And later on, when we conclude, we would note that at this level, at doctoral and master's level, researchers should make unique contributions, and they must show originality in the work that they've done. Therefore, it is important. This would only be possible if a researcher has actually undertaken literature study. So it is the basis of us continuing with the study. And this is mainly captured and reduced in writing as part of the background. The background should also show how the preliminary reading in the literature led to a refinement and focusing of the initial ideas. This is what literature is saying about background, and I'm going to venture now into the into how in a specific case that I read the topic about, how the researcher gave effect to what is contextualized here under background. This is going to be in black, as I've said. Now, this is the background that we find under the topic that I introduced.
Sorry, Korombi?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, sir.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, before we proceed, is there a distinction between a research plan and a research proposal? Or it's more or less the same thing?
No, I think it depends where it is presented. Yeah, I'm going to use that. If you are at work, you might, in any other organization, depends where you're working. Somebody might say, let's make a plan so that we can undertake a research that assists us to solve a problem. But I've seen most of the universities are talking about a research proposal. But you have seen in the preceding slides that I said a research proposal is a plan. Therefore, we can use these statements interchangeably, but it will depend on the institution that is actually going to use the document, how they want to call it. I haven't seen a university calling it a plan, but I just came across it when I was reading from literature that they equate it with a plan.
Okay, the reason why I ask, say, in one of the subjects in human rights law, they asked for a research plan, and I was just wondering, is there actually a distinction between a proposal and a plan? And also, earlier on, you alluded to the outlines of a proposal, and I'm just wondering if it's the same.
Yeah, I have not come across it anywhere when it was referring to a proposal. You see, the other thing that I can mention here, researchers, authors write these things. Sometimes they use statements that are confusing because at the end of the research proposal, someone can say, show me a plan how you are going to execute your research proposal. You see, in other words, how you're going to execute a research project. So it is required of me as a student or as a researcher to indicate from day one. I think in month one, I will do this. Month two, I'll do this. Then I've got a plan on how I will complete my research project or program. So plan is used on various ways, but it depends on what, how people want to use it. But I've not come across a proposal being referred to as a plan. This is the background of the project that I executed. It starts from the background. I just made an extract of the most important facts or statements. There is a lot that I did not take because it was going to be too much here for presentation. It says the Bill of Rights. I know this was the very first statement. The Bill of Rights provides for the protection of the environment, including water, and guarantees that. Sorry, it guarantees the right of access to water by South African citizens. Yes. Then I think the other statements, the other parts of the statement has been an error. I think here we should have taken this out. But it shows that there is an extract from the Bill of Rights. So this is from the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. This is the fundamental law of South Africa. And in it, we find it gives, it is a basis of a lot of legislation that is there. So including the water law. Prior to 1994, management of water was centralized and later decentralized to the catchment management agencies at regional level after 1994. The catchment management agencies are governed by boards that appoint CEOs who in turn appoint staff. We said these are government entities, but they must have staff. That's why they have got CEOs under and other staff members. Organization theory can be defined as study of organizational designs and organizational structures and the relationship of organizations with their external environment. Here, there is reference to the public entities, which are CMAs, and there is reference to the theory of organizations. And earlier on, our topic was the establishment of catchment management agencies. And it says in after colon, an organizational design perspective. It means there's catchment management agencies as one aspect, and there's an organizational design. So these are the two parameters that are under study. So this is where I want to stop now. And if there are comments, I welcome those. And the most important aspect is to critically look at this background. If it suffices, or if I will explain if there are other things that I've left out that might have improved the understanding. But this is the core of what the background constituted. I made sure that I took things that are relevant to the topic and things that show that the study is actually focusing on the entities, and it is about their organizational designs of the entities, because this is what the topic is all about. Now, we look at the statement of the research problem or the research question. And we will again want to see if this actually would comply with what literature says. And literature says this: when you state the research question or the research problem, the researcher will have to be totally convinced and be able to convince the prospective supervisors that the problem the researcher wants to research is indeed a researchable one. It means we must satisfy the supervisor. The second, the clarification of whether the topic is a researchable problem depends largely on the extensive literature review of what the researcher might think of as a researchable problem. And this is where I emphasized earlier on that a lot of things that we do when we prepare a proposal is supported by literature review. So preliminary literature review is very, very important because it makes us understand the topic, if indeed it is a problem, and this will have to assist us to convince our supervisors that this topic is indeed researchable. Let me look at what the statement of problem was under this topic. Under the statement of problem, we had these statements. The water sector in South Africa faces the problem that there is no surplus water in the country and that available water resources are at their limit. Statement number one. We also hear that CEOs of the catchment management agencies are currently experiencing specific problems when it comes to the management of their respective catchment management agencies. Most of them are interim. That is the CEOs. That the CEOs were acting when I decided to pursue this research project. The employees of the Department of Water and Sanitation lodged a grievance in 2015 that stopped the CMAs to become operational. In other words, the background is that we don't have all catchment management agencies established in the country. But the country intended by that time to establish 9 of them. And at the time of writing the proposal and executing the project, there were only 2 catchment management agencies that were established. Therefore, we only had 2 permanent catchment chief executive officers that were leading them. And in other provincial offices, because the department also had 9 provincial offices, we had 7 acting chief executive officers, and these are the ones that were experiencing problems. And the last statement says, whereas catchment management agency boards are constituted by representatives of communities and water users, they lack the necessary skills. So this is an extract of the statement of a problem. And let me again pause and request for comments if they are there. If they are not there, I will also move forward. So we have heard what the literature said that we need to convince the supervisors that this is researchable. And then later on, I'm going to make a comment on how I came about convincing the supervisor that this is researchable.
I just want to ask regarding the statement of the problem. I'm doing coursework, so there's an assignment that I was busy with, and then one of the questions we were requested to analyze an article. So one of the questions was saying, is the problem statement clearly articulated in a single sentence? So I'm trying to figure out, does the problem statement have to be a single statement or a single sentence at the very end of the paragraphs that speak to the problem? Or how exactly do you identify that this is the problem statement? Because I see here you mentioned a couple of points which lead to the problem, but how can we say this is the problem statement? Thank you.
In my view, I think one statement would not suffice. And where I see a problem statement as a discussion of the problem itself. In other words, if I just let me tell you what now I will share with you how I came to research organizational design. My initial research topic was not organizational design, and it never said catchment management agencies and an organizational design perspective. I presented to the supervisor that I want to research the role of the acting chief executive officers, because I noted that they had a problem. And I wanted to research an existing problem, a true problem, so that I can make recommendations that would assist the department and the acting chief executive officers, so that those problems that they were encountering could be resolved. Then later on, I think, and I've got a perception. Let me go to the next slide before I could say my final statement on your question. You see, my initial research topic was the role of acting chief executive officers of the catchment management agencies in South Africa. And this was a real problem, as I said. Acting CEO were not widely accepted within the department. So they could not execute their mandate as expected. They had a lot of challenges. So I said, I'm going to investigate this, and I want to make a proposal and recommendations to the department so that these problems could be addressed. Therefore, when the supervisor changed the topic and said, no, he doesn't think that this is a real problem, then I perceived that he thought that there is an underlying problem why CEOs are actually coming across the problem. And then he assisted me to craft the statement of a problem that you see in here. And that problem, in it, you also see that he says something about the catchment management agency, the CEOs. Then he says something about the catchment management agencies as entities. But he also, at the very last statement, you see that, no, not the last one. I want to, okay, he has said a lot. Him and I have said a lot about the CMAs. Then we refer to the boards. Okay, boards are structures, and if they are wrongly designed, and to this theory, it means that the organization itself will struggle to operate. And in the design of the organization, you have how processes should be structured. Then this includes how staff needs to be organized, how work needs to be executed. Then, in other words, the role of the CEOs is going to be affected by the way in which you design the organization. Then that is the reason why I think he took me from a very narrow, simplified research topic to a broader one, where he would not only focus on the CEO as they are, because he noted that the problem was very large. And therefore, that is why we had a number of statements that were talking about the organization. These statements should even have said something about the organization, the design of these organizations. Do I make sense why we need to, why I had more statements than just one statement?
Yeah, I think I do follow. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's just the different colleges that require our structures to be in a certain way. So, but then I think, because even in my proposal, there are a number of issues that lead to what I call a problem.
Yes.
For example, practically, I'm in the accounting science, so my issues go around unspent funds in government. So in that unspent funds, I have service delivery issues. That's a problem, because when funds are not spent, it means now it will affect service delivery.
Yes.
And then it means it also challenges now the planning of the department, the budget planning, and this and that and that. So those things on their own, there are issues or there are problems.
Yes.
So that's why I was a bit confused. How do I now say this is the problem? Or do I summarize it and try to come up with a thing? Because those things are problems in their own.
Yeah, you see, I hear you.
Look, I was listening, hoping that you would also answer my question, because I think my question is around the same structuring of the research problem. Must it be a very narrow, focused problem, or must it be a broad set of problems? It may be more than one. So I was listening, hoping that probably maybe it would be covered in the response. And I think we have somewhat responded to ourselves to say it depends on the type of the colleges. But in certain instances, like we have here on the slide, the problem may have been expanded to cover, but necessarily, I mean, I think the question still stands. Must it be a very narrow, or must it be a broad? What is the expectation? Because you may, as a writer, think that it needs to be narrow, and somebody else then may see it as a very broad problem. Where do you draw the line?
Okay, I also want to make another statement. You see, I'm happy that you said it might depend on the colleges. Apart from the colleges, it might also depend on the supervisor. You see, supervisors have got certain preferences. As long as they are within the broad guidelines on what the statement of problem should address. If what they advise you to do will eventually show that there is a problem, then I don't have a problem. Because my feeling is, I like that you can indicate where the problem starts, then you build up a number of statements that can point towards what you're going to research. You see, here I can say CEOs are actually suffering. But at the same time, when they suffer, there is poor service delivery because water is not going to the people. I can also say the country does not have water. And my first statement here shows that the country does not have water. So I was trying to put the problem in the context of water resource management, because I know that in chapter 2, I'm going to talk about the role of the department, the role of CMAs, and the specific objectives for what they are established is going to be made clear in chapter 2. But here what do you do here? You put something in context, and it lays a ground for future chapters and for future discussions. And I cannot say if there is just one statement, it is wrong. But I feel that, apart from putting one statement, I could have said the organizational design of catchment management agencies is important in ensuring that CEOs do not encounter problems, full stop. And that is correct. But here we have tried to put other statements so that we make a build up to show that the problem is there, but it affects water, it affects CEOs, it affects the organizations themselves, and it affects capacity building. You see, so I think there are preferences, and I cannot say if it is one statement, it will still be wrong. But just tell me, the supervisors, if you put a lot of statements under the problem, are they saying no, are they strictly saying put one statement? Are they saying so?
Not necessarily saying so. I think we are at a stage where, well, I am at a stage where I'm still crafting it. So,
yes.
So I'm not too sure what they are expecting, but I was thinking along the lines of is there, for instance, a predetermination to say it must be a focused research question? And my other follow-up question would be, when you have set out the problems like you have outlined them, is it an expectation that in every, there must be a chapter that is dedicated towards resolving or sort of like dealing with the respective problem per literature? I don't know if that question makes sense. So if you have, for instance, like 4 or 5 research as problem statements, must you set aside a chapter for each and ascribe some sort of literature to it?
Later on, we will see that we're going to see a research question. A research question is a broad question, and it is answered by developing the purpose for the research. And the research question and the purpose are all based on the research topic. That is why from the research question, you might have sub-problems, or you might have sub-research questions. And the way in which you develop objectives, you turn your research questions into statements, into intent, statement of intent. Then you are responding to the purpose, because the purpose was based on the question, and your objectives now are responding to the sub questions. And all of these must assist you to actually address the topic. And at the end of your research project, and when you are producing a research report, and there is a section where you indicate how you have achieved the objectives. And the objectives are indeed, I like that you made mention of chapters. The objectives indicate to you the chapters that will be there, that will follow. And I think in the example that I have here, the chapters were based on the objectives and the research questions. So these things are interlinked. In the statement of a problem, you won't have all the objectives and you won't have all the questions, but it must indicate that there is something that is not in order that you want to investigate. So it is stated under the statement of a problem. We will give effect to the statement of a problem, because the statement of a problem actually gives effect to the topic. Then we will give effect to the topic and the statement of a problem through research questions and research objectives. And our methodology will assist us on how we will do that.
It's clear. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Yes,
Dr.
thank you very much.
Korendi, before you proceed,
Yes.
there's a comment on the chat from one
Yes.
of the researchers here.
Yes.
Ngamije Fidele. I hope I'm not butchering your name. He or she says, I used to think problem statement as a gap necessity. There's a preposition missing there. Or I used to think problem statement as a gap necessity. I don't know, for your topic or in your topic or to your topic. And then the researcher goes on to say, I need your clarification on my assumption, Doc.
I don't think the researcher is wrong there. I think she or he is correct. You know, I remember in one of my my research report, and even in my proposal, where after I have indicated something about the statement of a problem, I said, this has not been done, therefore it must be examined. You see, so in other words, I was saying that gap that exists as stated under the statement of a problem is the justification for the execution of the research project. I've done that. And I think we can, if we go to literature, this we will find some who can advise what should go into the specific into the research problem. Although they differ, I think broadly there would be an agreement, because authors do differ in the way that they make recommendations. But I think the gist of it, you would find that they are in line. They are in line with what would assist us to actually define the problem correctly. So the researcher who is saying it is a gap analysis, you see, I think it is fair to say it is a gap analysis to show that there is a problem there, because this was not researched. Later on, I don't know if it is in this presentation, where we indicate that preliminary literature review would indicate literature that what literature has said, what literature did not say, and what the gaps are there. And this justifies our research, because if there is a gap, my contribution is actually to close the gap. And if I'm not closing the gap, there is no need to do my research, because I'm not going to make any contribution. I think we will see this later on when we look at the contribution of the study. Can we pass on now here? But I want us to say, I want to recommend that we as we adjourn, I will go also and look at literature, at what different authors say, then I'll look at many of them, then and see if they indeed support this author where I made an extract from.
May I take on something?
Yes.
Yes. Is it not the problem statement meant to demarcate the parameters of your research? I've heard the fellow there indicating that there should be a number of problem statements.
No, the parameters of your research, remember there is a delimitation. I don't know if in the content I've indicated that, somebody indicated that although I'm going to research catchment management agencies, how they are organized in South Africa, I will not research all of them. I will do 2. Or although I will research them, I will not do this work. My work will only concentrate on this because of the resources and the time that is available, that is there. Because one cannot research the entire world. You cannot research, otherwise you won't even be able to analyze the data. So under delimitation, we must indicate what we can bite and what we cannot bite. And remember, even at the end of our studies, we can make recommendations for future studies. That which I think I could not investigate, but it's important for the understanding of what I was investigating. I can leave it for other people. Then I put it as a recommendation that this and this must warrant further research.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can we? I like these discussions. Can we go to the next section now? This comment we've discussed. Now, after I have stated the research problem. Then the supervisor actually assisted me to craft a research question, and this is an overall one, which under which we will find a number of sub questions or sub problems. It says, can an analysis and implementation of the principles of organizational design assist catchment management agencies to manage their respective water management areas more effectively so that a better service can be rendered to their stakeholders, which are the public? And the understanding was, if this is answered, it means that we are actually answering, we are addressing the research problem, and we are actually responding to the, we are addressing the focus of the research topic. And I continued to have research questions here, which are below that overarching one. And I would pause when I finish reading them so that we can see if they are indeed in line with the broader question and if they will assist us in answering that broader question. The first one says, on which theoretical principles are the phenomenon organizational design founded within the context of organizational theory and studies? Second, what is the history of the establishment of the catchment management agencies in South Africa, and which legislation lays the foundation for water management? What is, this is the third one, what is the current situation of the catchment management agencies and the proto-CMAs and their chief executive officers in South Africa, with a focus on 2 operational catchment management agencies and 7 proto-catchment management agencies? 3, and the fourth one is, how can the catchment management agencies and their CEOs that are acting be streamlined according to theoretical principles and the results of the empirical study? So we had 4 sub questions, and I wanted to pause here so that we can see if these sub questions indeed assist us to respond to the broader questions, if indeed they are all related to that big question. Because if we turn them around, they should give us objectives that assist us to actually respond to the research question. Do we believe and feel that these 4 questions are actually sub questions to the bigger question?
I suppose they sort of, and like you said, that research shouldn't be dedicated to one, and or furthering the research can be postponed for further researches. But I think it does expand because it's based on the initial question, but it does expand. That's my mere submission.
Let's go to the next section, and we would see, as we go to the research objectives, we would see if these indeed respond to the questions. Here, literature requires us to clearly define the purpose or the objective of the study. This is one of the most important parts of the foundation of any study. And I believe it is because it would tell us what we want to do in the research project. What do you want to achieve and why? I think this is what I'm just reiterating what I said. What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve and why? Lastly, what are the primary and secondary objectives? And let's see what the researcher has done in crafting the purpose and the objectives. And here, the researcher did not have a purpose. I don't know if it was my oversight when I made an extract, but I did not bring in this presentation. I don't have a purpose, and this report was passed, and the examiners gave them very good rating, and the researcher graduated. But okay, let's, in the absence of the purpose, and let me make a statement even before we could read the specific objectives. My feeling was that the purpose, if we were to craft a purpose, we could turn around that overarching question, research question, and develop a purpose statement there. And if I were to go back to that overarching question, I would have, I think, unfortunately, my researcher is not here and that we've completed the studies, but I would propose that the purpose reads like this. The purpose of this study is to analyze and implement the principles of organizational design to assist catchment management agencies to manage their respective water management areas more effectively so that a better service can be rendered to their stakeholders, which are the public. In other words, I just turned this question into a purpose statement. This is what I've done, because I'm saying so because the specific objectives are just responses to the specific sub questions, and I've just turned the questions around and crafted the specific objectives. And let me read the specific objectives. To analyze, the first one, to analyze and discuss the theoretical principles of the phenomenon organizational design within the context of the organizational theory and studies. And I think this comes from one of the research questions. Let me go back and indicate which research question this one is going to try to answer. Here it is. It is the first one. It says, on which theoretical principles are the phenomenon organizational design founded within the context of organizational theory and studies? So it means a sub-objective actually was developed from a sub-question. And the second objective, to explore, and then there is an error of this this word here, to explore the history on how the catchment management agencies in South Africa were established. And number three, to analyze the legislation that laid the foundation of water management in South Africa. And these two statements, sub-objectives, come from one research question. And I will take you to that. Let me take you to them, to that very one. It says, what is the history of the establishment of CMAs in South Africa? And which legislation? The second part, which legislation, is that third sub-objective. And the fourth one says, to undertake an empirical study to determine the current situation of the 7 proto-CMAs and 2 operational CMAs and their CEOs in South Africa. And this, I think, also comes from one of the research questions. Let's go and see. It says, what is the current situation of the CMAs and their CEOs in South Africa, with focus on 2 operational CMAs and 7 proto-CMAs? So mainly all the sub-objectives are coming from the sub questions. And the last one read like this: to make recommendations on how can the CMAs and their CEOs be streamlined according to theoretical principles and the results of the empirical study. And this is what how the study would also make a contribution, and as part of its contribution. And here we are. If there are any comments, they are welcome at this stage. But I was just showing that after research questions were crafted, objectives were crafted along the same line. And earlier on, I said our chapters respond to specific questions. And how we respond to those questions is through the intent statements, which are our objectives, our sub-objectives. So we just went through the questions and the objectives. And if there are any comments, they are welcome at this stage. In the absence of comments, we're going to move on to the next slide. And I say, if there's anybody who would think of a question at a later stage, you can interject. Even if you're asking about previous slides, it will be fine. Now, we come to the theoretical framework now. This is the philosophy that underpins your research in the context of the current literature, the philosophy. And let's just go and see how this was worded and how it was framed. And this is the theoretical argument from our example, our case study. It says, organizational theory studies organizations to identify the patterns and structures they use to solve problems, maximize efficiency and productivity, and meet the expectations of stakeholders. And here, the focus of studies is on the catchment management agencies, how they are organized. Second statement, correctly applying organizational theory can have several benefits for the organization, its employees, and society at large. And earlier on, we read an objective that says it can improve service delivery to the stakeholders and the water users. Now, the last statement, an extract from the theoretical arguments. It says, organizational design is a step-by-step methodology which identifies dysfunctional aspects in organizations, which includes analysis of workflow, procedures, structures, and systems with the purpose of realigning them to fit current business or problems or realities, goals, and then develops plans to implement the new changes. This is how the theoretical arguments were structured, were worded. And we can make comments if they are there. The next slide is again about literature. Literature says we must do literature review. What literature is available must be known to us by reading. What is missing from literature, that is the gap. What kinds of literature are available? And I think within this context, when I read literature, it also assists me to identify gaps in terms of the topic under investigation, the work that has been done and the work that has not been done. And that is the justification for me undertaking the study, so that I can do the work that has not been done as a way of closing the gap. And thereby, I will be able to make a contribution to the body of knowledge. Apart from literature review, literature wants us to even select the research method. In other words, is the study mainly qualitative? Is it quantitative? Or is it a combination of the two paradigms? This must be stated upfront, and it is going to be part and parcel of the research proposal. And I think it was also part and parcel of what was listed. And we will look at how this researcher has actually addressed all these. Population sampling, who is to be included? It is important to know where information will come from. Who's going to be included in the research so as to be able to draw conclusions about what, who will be observed, and for what purpose. And let us just look at what the researcher did. If there is literature review, if there's methods that have been selected, and if there is a sampling design that was proposed. Let's look at this. And now, here we read about the research design. For the purpose of this study, a qualitative research design will be used to uncover the current situation of the catchment management agencies and the proto-catchment management agencies and their CEOs, the interim ones in South Africa. Qualitative research begins with assumptions and the use of interpretive or theoretical frameworks that inform the study or research problems addressing the meaning individuals of groups ascribe to a social or human problem. This is justification for the use of qualitative research. The choice of qualitative research designs took into account that people and their behavior in their natural setting are the focus of the subject matter. Qualitative research will allow the subject matter to be studied from within their communities and societies and from their point of view. And here is literature. The researcher will, this was still in the proposal, the researcher will conduct a literature review in the early stages of the research process to essentially, sorry, there's some missing link here. There's something that has been missed. But this is to show that literature research will be undertaken. Essentially, literature research will build on the existing knowledge. I'll reverse statement number 1 there, my apology. So in other words, literature review would be done. This is what the proposal is saying. And here, the data collection techniques and the methods are going to be said in here. We will see if this also includes the sampling design. The statement says, data will be collected at the hand of unstructured interviews, focus groups, observations, and analysis of legislation and official documentation and policies. So these are the methods that are going to be used in collecting data. So in other words, we've addressed the aspect of methodology that is required, that we need to present and to indicate if we're making our proposal. The last statement, research participants will purposefully be selected due to their knowledge on the subject matter and their experience on the activities of the catchment management agencies. This last statement talks to the sampling design, who will be included and how they will be included. They will purposefully. So it will be purposive sampling that will assist us to identify and include participants, research respondents. So we've addressed literature review, we've addressed research, the need for research methods, and we've addressed the need for the sampling design. And I want to pause here because from here we will go to the next section. But I want to see if we are all in agreement that literature has been addressed, methods have been addressed, the sampling design has been addressed. Any comments so far? Researchers, your comments, do you agree? If you agree, I've turned to the screen and I would be even be able to see your hands. If you wave your hand, if you are in agreement, you can just wave your hands or you can interject by saying something. Are we in agreement that it has been, we addressed literature? Thank you very much. There is an agreement. Literature has been addressed. I also assume so. And this was my research report, colleagues. I've addressed the literature in the now we are moving now to the next section, and this one I did not put something in red, but I have included the ethical consideration because it is required of us, and I think I will revise this to indicate that it is required of the researcher when he presents a proposal to indicate how he will comply with the ethics of research, that he would not hurt the respondents, that he will respect them. So that is the reason why earlier on we said, even before a research proposal is approved, the ethics committee must also give consent to it. They must scrutinize and see that it indeed meets the standard set by the committee itself to regulate that research is indeed ethical.
Can I clarify something quickly?
Yes.
Well, I'm looking at your slide 21 and 22.
Yes.
moving to 22, you have a research design, and the researcher there has made up their mind to say they will utilize whether qualitative or quantitative. And in terms of 21, you are saying it could be either of those or a combination. But I just want to find out in my head, what is the process of decision making in terms of saying, for the purposes of this research, this is quantitative or qualitative? I don't see that part. And how do you get to that part? What informs that decision? Because I see that in terms of this presentation, the decision has been made without creating the link, in terms of the process leading to the decision itself, to say it's qualitative for this reason or quantitative for this reason, and why, it should be qualitative or quantitative or combination of both. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to the slide that talks to the methodology. Sorry. Oh, yeah, the design. I said, for the purpose of this study, this is an extract from the proposal. A qualitative research design will be used to uncover the current situation of the catchment management agencies and their CEOs in South Africa. Qualitative research begins with, I did not justify why. Okay, let's go down here. Qualitative research begins with assumptions and the use of interpretive or theoretical frameworks that inform the study or research problems addressing meaning individuals or groups ascribed to a social or human problem. Now, okay, this is the justification. Now I see it here. Number 3, the choice of qualitative research design took into account that people and their behavior in their natural setting are the focus of the subject matter. Now, in other words, we are saying, if we are going to sample people, if we are going to gather information from people, we believe that we can go qualitative, because we will understand, we will be looking at the behavior, their beliefs, and we will find them in their settings. And qualitative would give them an opportunity to express themselves and give a narrative about how the CMAs are operating and the CEOs and how they are designed. I want to understand your question again. I thought that number 3 justifies why I chose qualitative. It is because I'm going to engage people. They will be respondents. So I thought qualitative is better than quantitative, because what I need is an explanation from them. Then therefore I did not want to go quantitative. Do you have a comment after I've said that?
Yeah, well, you do explain that in terms of your number 3. Perhaps maybe for my better consumption or understanding, maybe on my side I was assuming a debate that would say quantitative is not working for these reasons, and the combination can not work for the following reasons, and hence qualitative is the best one for me. It goes on to say qualitative research design took into account, whatever considerations, whether it's people or behavior, without, the benefit of saying, for these reasons, I select, qualitative over quantitative because of certain flaws or deficiencies that may be produced in terms of the result if you utilize another method. Yeah.
I think your statements, what you're saying, your argument is correct. I might have not extracted everything from the the report and from the proposal. I always, when I took a methodology, I know that this is a non. You see, the sampling design here that we've used here is purposive. It is non-probability, and it is actually supporting that I'm doing qualitative. And I always downplay if I've taken if I've taken non-probability, I will downplay the probability sampling designs. That probability sampling designs would even include subjects or people that do not have knowledge on the subject under discussion. So the qualitative design will allow me to use a research method such as focus group, the one that I've used here, that would allow me to engage people. But to do that, my sampling design should also support the method. So I went purposive. Then I want people who know the subject, and I will engage these people. Then I will gather information. And even the number of people that I engage would be very minimal. This study, by the way, was completed with only 3 focus groups. And the work of collecting data was only done in 3 days. So in other words, one group gathered, then I gathered in one venue, I engaged them, gathered data from them, then I moved to the second and the third. So this is qualitative, and it is a simple methodology for me, and I understand it better. I tend to cling towards qualitative because of that. But of late, I'm even starting to understand that using both quantitative and qualitative is more beneficial than using only qualitative or only quantitative. I know that I've mastered on my side. I've done lots of work on using qualitative, maybe 3 times, but I might have used quantitative mixed method once. Yes, but your argument is fair. I think there is a statement that I did not put here that shows me why I did not use quantitative. And I think it's a fair comment. And I can encourage everybody who's going to prepare a proposal to indicate, to justify, when you are justifying why you are taking a specific method or paradigm or approach, you need to downplay the other one. I think this is a very fair comment, acceptable.
Dr. Kurumbi?
Yes, sir.
Could you please explain the benefits of considering using both qualitative and quantitative in your study?
Yes, I'm going to do it overall and broadly. I will not be specific. But if specifics are needed, we can zoom into the mixed methods in future and deal with it per se. Then we can unpack it and see where we get its benefit. But what I know is that qualitative research has got its own advantages and disadvantages. Whereas similarly, quantitative research has got advantages and disadvantages. I think I must mention one now. When you are using qualitative research methods, you are interested on in-depth information. You are not generalizing. Therefore, the outcomes of your study cannot be generalized. Then you miss the general picture, but you are very in-depth with the specifics. Now, on the antithesis, if you go quantitative goes very generic. And it has got a shortcoming that it does not zoom into details. Therefore, it generalizes, but it misses the depth of the phenomenon under investigation. You see, qualitative, you deal with people. If you have brought them in the room, you are discussing these things, they explain it upside and down, and they write a lot of statement about it, paragraphs and paragraphs. But if I just ask you, how much salary do you earn per year? You just say 500,000 per year, you keep quiet. You see? So we generically would know, oh, researchers earn 500,000 or between 500,000 and 800,000 generically. But someone can say, what do you do with your money when you have earned at the end of the month? The other one will say, I will go to the club. The other one, I will fund my bond. The other one, I'll take my children to school. I'll buy a new car. I'll do this and that, because of that and that and that and that. That is the difference between quantitative and qualitative. So there are underlying advantages and disadvantages for both of them. And the recommendation is, if you mix the two, you actually, in a way, are benefiting from the advantages of all of them. And at the same time, you address the shortcomings from either of them. That is the benefit that the authors, most of the literature say. I was under the ethical consideration, and I was indicating that this is a requirement of most of the institutions, particularly academic institutions. They would require you to comply with specific ethics, and they've established gatekeeping institutions, governance structures such as the ethics committee. And I think UNISA does one of the very strong.
Doctor?
Yes, sir.
In terms of dealing with ethics, when you are doing or rather, let me ask it like this, is there a particular way in which you should deal with the whole communication of ethics when you're dealing with quantitative as compared to qualitative, or it is a similar method of dealing with ethics? Because, for instance, in the legal study, you only get to, well, not only, but you let me speak for me.
Yes.
I've chosen a topic that deals with literature, and it does not involve any quantitative element to it. So the only ethical consideration there would be around plagiarism, for instance. How does one communicate this in this section?
What I hear is you are asking if there's a way in which you address ethics under the different paradigms, whether it is qualitative or quantitative. I have not read it. I have not read it somewhere, but I only see that it becomes a requirement. But we can do further studies on it. I have collected quantitative data in the past, and I've collected qualitative data in the past. And in the first studies where I collected, in the first studies, it was survey, and the survey included both quantitative quantitative data and qualitative data. And it was under, I had the consent and approval from the institution. And when I declared that I will consider, I will take into account the ethics of research when I go and meet respondents. So it was the ethics that was approved for me, that led to the approval of my research, was all embracive, inclusive of data that will be collected through quantitative and qualitative measures. So it was one. But later on, there were instances where I was only collecting qualitative data, and I saw the same ethical codes applied. Then I took it that no, the same ethics has to be applied, whether it is, I think ethics should be generic, whether it is qualitative or quantitative. That is why what I was led to believe. But if needs be, we can go and investigate further. And we can hear from literature and other researchers if it is an issue, if it is quantitative or qualitative.
Dr. Korombi, there's also another hand from Mahlohonolo.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Doctor, I just want to also inquire. I think I did send you an email earlier with this methodology part. Sorry to take you a bit back.
Yes.
But you know, even in our proposals, we're expected to also indicate how we're going to analyze the data. Yeah. So I'm not sure if any of your slides address data analysis. So that because yeah, I'm not yet clued up with that, as you indicated that sometimes mixed methods work best, or some of the studies require you to do mixed methods. Yes. And when we read, it says you must know your strengths as a researcher. So
yes,
I've just discovered that my study contains mixed methods, but I was more confident with the qualitative. Hence, I was worried that how am I now going to deal with the quantitative part of things? So I need to know how to analyze and all that. I don't know if it's part of these slides or whether we'll do another data analysis session or what.
You know, I want to declare here. I know that I want to cite an example. There's a lot of people who are interested on statistical analysis. That is when we come to quantitative data analysis. My strength is on qualitative, and I tend to shun away from the calculations and so on. But when I was presenting survey research, I don't think, was it to this group? I think it was to the honors group. I showed where I collected the qualitative data and where I collected the quantitative data. And I even took sections where I was analyzing qualitative data, as well as sections where I was analyzing quantitative data. And I took an example how I simply analyzed, because I did not do complicated statistics, but I calculated, I used a calculator. I could make a graph having calculated with a calculator. You see, in that survey research that I was making in the example, my respondents were 100. The sample was composed of 100 respondents. But if all of them, I could account for every answer in every question that I've asked, whether quantitative or qualitative. And for quantitative, I could use my calculator. 30% of them have responded yes, 20% don't know, 15% says yes. Then I could calculate and I could make a very good analysis and make an interpretation of the implications on the topic under research. I did that one. Unfortunately, I don't have the slides here, but I have them in this computer. And sometimes when we have we done data collection with yourselves? Did we deal with survey as a data collection technique? We did not.
No, we haven't, because remember, we only started with this group last week.
Okay, we will.
So
if we will,
I would suppose it's still on your plan.
Okay, we will. I think this question will suit better there, and you will see how I simply calculated and how I simply presented information. And I want to tell you my approach to research. If there are procedures and processes and strategies that are available there, what I do, I look at the one that I understand the best, and the one that is the simplest, and I pursue that one. And luckily, most of the strategies that I use are qualitative, and I enjoy doing those. So when you have collected data, now I'm going back to your mixed method. If you have collected data through mixed methods, and this is what I did with the survey, and you will find that the data collection instrument is the one that assists you actually to triangulate. Okay, your questionnaire is the one that will assist you to use two methods, because in the same questionnaire, you would have a question that is open-ended, the other one closed. So the closed one mainly would be collecting quantitative, and the open-ended ones will be qualitative in nature, will be giving you a lot of explanation, a lot of talks, paragraphs and paragraphs. Now, when you are going to analyze data, that which is qualitative, you should use qualitative data analysis. You analyze using qualitative methods to analyze that qualitative data. And the quantitative one, you need to use quantitative strategies and methods of analyzing data. So it means if you have used mixed, then you're going to use the two strategies, because the use of two means that you are using two methodologies. You are within the two paradigms you are mixing. So you also will borrow from each of them in order to do analysis. But in this presentation, I'm sorry, I don't have an example, but I would have, when we do the survey, then I will do an extract on how I've analyzed the data. There we can go deeper, and if needs be, we can do more research and debate it and see how we can assist you. But otherwise, even outside here, if you want to see, if you want to pursue this discussion and on quantitative and qualitative, we can do it outside again, maybe by phone or MS Teams. We can do it, and I can take those examples and show them to you. If you want to use them now while you're still designing, then we can deal with them. Unless if the schedule of that presentation is not very far. If it is next week, then it means we will be able to deal with it next week. I don't know, Linda, how far that one is. If it is next week, or I think it is this month. We have scheduled for it this month. Matha, are you happy now with the response?
No, thank you. I think I will engage when I get stuck again. No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, thanks a lot. Can we move now? We were on ethics, and if we and I see that we are moving towards the end of the presentation. The study contribution. Literature says all masters and doctoral students will have to show the significance of their research and the implications of the results. Second, they will contribute as original researchers in their field. Their research will produce unique and relevant new information within their professional fields. So that is how all of us can contribute to the body of knowledge. And that is why it is very, very important when you are selecting a topic. And in most cases, I'm interested in selecting a topic that has not been researched by anybody, because I know there I'm going to be very original. It might be that I am the first to research on the topic, and I make sure that I craft it in a way that I must feel that it is going to be to break ground. That is what, if you do that one, you become very original. It means even the contribution will be very original, because it is something that has not been researched. So it is a new thing. We are breaking new grounds. In other words, we will be able to contribute into the body of knowledge. And I've got an example here. When I submitted a certain report, it was at TUT in 2012. I was researching on tourism, and I used participatory action research method to collect data as a research method. My supervisors were telling me, oh, you're using this methodology. This methodology is rarely used in the field of tourism, in the discipline tourism. So even when I completed the study, they commented that the chapter on research methods was the one that made the best contribution in the discipline of tourism. So I was happy, and I still remember my chapter 3 was chapter 3. Yes, my research methodology chapter was about 30 and above. It might have been even 35 pages. And I think I was happy with the methodology and account, the description, and the way I implemented in the field. And by the way, participatory action research is qualitative. It's a very good method. And it is in line with my lifestyle. I like engaging. I'm going to move now, and so that we can see how the study contributed. In other words, how it will contribute. The proposal says the study will contribute to the body of knowledge of organizational studies, and more specifically on organizational design. Yes, because this is what we were investigating with respect to catchment management agencies. Second, the study will thus be of value not only for science, but also for the Department of Water and Sanitation, for the catchment management agencies, and the CEOs who manage the catchment management agencies. Because I said CEOs have got problems, and it was the CMAs whose organizations we were investigating. So we want to see how they are designed, how we can better design them so that we can enhance service delivery. The study will use organizational theories and empirical study to recommend how organizational problems of the catchment management agencies can be addressed. And I've said earlier on that I thought that CEOs were encountering problems. And my assumption at the end, when they assisted me to choose this topic, is that they thought that the problem was deeper than only with the CEOs. It was organizational in a way. That is why they thought that we can investigate how these organizations were designed. The study will also contribute to the theoretical principles of organizational design. Each studies, particularly basic study, will always contribute to the theory. This is how we also contribute to the body of knowledge. And I think this is the very last slide. And let me pause here if there are any comments on how the study should contribute. And I think this should be very, very important, because I link this to the research topic. And there, we must not forget that we had a discussion on the statement of a problem. A statement of a problem will show us that there is a problem. So if the problem has never been resolved, if what we are studying has never been studied, then the contribution is also going to be profound. Any comments so far?
Can I just ask, when it comes to the ethical consideration, what are the steps, or when do we try to get our ethical clearance? Right now, some of us are busy with we're still in the beginning stage of drafting our proposal. It's not yet approved. It's between us and our supervisors. Is it only after approval or after presentation to the colloquium and everything that we now seek clearance, or when are we supposed to pursue that?
I think I will also request, I don't know, but what I've seen, Linda, you can also come in here, because I think even it might also depend on the policies of the organization. But what I know is that if this is submitted for approval, approval should include the approval from the ethics committee. That is what I believe. And I think if there is presentation that has to be done to the colloquium and any other thing that must be done on this on the proposal to get it approval, then it means the final approval should also include the ethical committee. I don't know how it works at UNISA, but I've heard that UNISA has got one of the very strong ethical committees. is a very strong one, because to get it approved, once you get it approved from the ethics committee, you must know that you have worked very well. And Lindelwa, if you've got any, can you please assist on this one?
My advice would be for our researchers to interact closely with their supervisor in terms of the ethics question, because every college has an ethics committee that addresses such matters. And it would differ, I would suppose, from college or faculty to faculty, or college to college.
Oh, I thought there was just one ethical committee for the university.
There are subcommittees, and then it's quite some structure. It starts with the department you are registered at. There would be a committee that looks at that, and then from there it goes to some other committee. I'm not quite 100% sure how it works, because I don't work in the College of Graduate Studies, but there is quite a hierarchy of sorts.
If you feel there are other questions that we did not do justice, you can make recommendations so that we can revisit this. I myself will go and do investigations. We can all go and investigate and then come and deliberate again. Or if there's just one person who wants to finalize it, then we can do it outside on one-on-one. But if there's something that needs all of us, then further investigation, then we discuss again. Are we all happy? I see Linda says, oh, okay, the people are saying we are happy. And if we are all happy, I want to hand over to Lindelwa so that she can make a closing remarks. But if there is a specific recommendation that we need to take into account in the next session, we can also accept that one. This session, I think it was out of the recommendation that we need to have it. Then if there is a specific section which you think we need to focus on next, we can. Otherwise, we have got our own schedule. Lindelwa can advise what is on the cards for next week, Thursday.
From the proposal that you gave me on the workshops, next week will be the 22nd of June. You have research planning, design, strategy, and information.
Is it?
And yeah.
Where does do we have something on data collection survey? Because that is where the examples of data analysis would be presented.
Oh, yeah, that was something you had indicated for an earlier workshop. Remember, we had to swap around.
We did swap around, so it was something that was
so
today. Ne?
You had scheduled that for the 8th of June, and then we swapped around and said, no, let's rather start with theme 1 under research process. So that data collection instruments session, we haven't done it yet. So are you suggesting that we should do that?
I suggest, let me propose to the team, to the participants, if we can look at that, then we will even see how data was analyzed. Examples.
Okay, that is fine. Then I will schedule that for the 22nd and confirm with you next week, Monday.
Okay.
And if you have time, you can also check some of the conversation we've been having on the chat. I was just responding to one of our researchers, Louis, who was asking about ethical considerations for his study.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know you responded and explained about qualitative and quantitative and the reasons why, how and why you would use those, and then put that in your ethical consideration section when doing your proposal. What Louis was actually asking is that in some of the studies that we do, you may find that you do not interact with any human or animal subject per se.
Yes.
But all you are doing is just doing document analysis, or you are working with well, in my case, I was working on an online technology project that pertains to language. So I wanted to write a conference paper on that, and I was worried about the process of applying for ethical approval and whatnot. And I was told that no, we don't necessarily need to go through that process because of ABC. So I was assuming that even Louis' question was similar to that, in the sense that I got the notion that he's working on analyzing, since he says he's from law, so he's analyzing documents instead of directly interacting with human participants. So I think he wanted clarity on how to phrase his ethical consideration paragraph or section when he writes his proposal.
Oh, is it? Oh, there he is putting a hand. Oh, yes, there. Oh, I did not, maybe I didn't understand the question, but I think the way you have responded is fair enough, that one can indicate to justify that the studies would not impact on human beings, and therefore, I think it can be phrased in that way. Yes, there would be less impact on human beings because no one would be involved in the studies. There would be no respondent. I think it is a fair comment. I think your responses can be used. Louis can use that approach. Of common sense.
Okay. In that case, then, before we wrap up, if I may share with the group as well, because there are quite a number of workshops taking place in the university across different departments. And if I happen to see something that might be useful for the group, I will also share it with the people who have attended. And this is what I'm doing currently in terms of yet another workshop that will be taking place outside this particular program of ours as Sunnyside Campus Group. There's a subject librarian who will be sharing some reference management tools next week on the 21st of June. Unfortunately, the workshop has been scheduled for 10 o'clock to 12 p.m. during the day. So I'm not so sure how many of you will be able to make it. But I will share the details when I share the rest of the presentation with you on email. It's for next week, the 21st. Last week, they had another session, and it was very, very useful. And for someone who is starting out in terms of compiling their proposal, I would advise that you try and attend. If you don't make it, I will find out if there will be a way of sharing that presentation for our researchers as well. So that would be my final words in terms of today's session, colleagues. So colleagues, I guess we can call it a day.